Ebony Jones, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Keith. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I'm so glad you came on the show.
I'm so glad that you answered my DM and you were open to it. So I'm super excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. And, it was one of those things, I get this like kind of random thing in my LinkedIn inbox. And at first I was kind of like, okay, yeah, maybe. But then you replied back and, you work for Columbine and all this really cool stuff. And I was like, yeah, for sure. And let's get Chantel on the show also. So
Yeah.
thank you for reaching out. Thank you for watching my podcast. What was it that got you to find it and think about it in the first place?
So, as I told you, like our team is fans, right? We have a lot of geologists, my support team, really almost everybody it has been in the field or was in the field before going to sales or operations. And when I first got into the industry, I knew nothing, Keith. Like I come from a fitness background,
Yeah.
working with pro athletes and weight loss gyms. So when I came into oil and gas, I was like, sure, like I don't know a whole lot, but let me try. Great at like equipping me with things to listen to. But what I noticed is that there's not really a lot of places to find like the real, the raw, the dirty of the industry, right? So for
Yeah.
somebody who's new or wanting to learn about it, I just like I wanted the inside scoop, but if you've never been in the field, how do you get that, right? And so my VP of operations, Ben, and my Houston sales manager, Tim, were like, there's this guy with a great podcast, like he's super trending on LinkedIn. And, I'm all about the social medias and the LinkedIn and building that presence. I was like, well, let me go check it out. And, I was listening to a few episodes. I like just the diversity of people that you have on, which, drew me in. You also don't see a lot of women in the oil and gas sector, nonetheless on podcasts. So when I saw Taylor, I was like, that kind of really is what hooked me. I was like, okay, it's not just another male dominated industry
Yeah.
podcasting. So I like seeing the variety of what you had, but just you gave me new concepts to think about, new words I hadn't heard. So, I'm over with my chat GPT asking like, what is this word? What does this mean? And it just, it just helped me show up better in interviews, just in conversation, helped me feel more like I belonged in the industry and one that I was trying to build my name in.
Well, that's a lot. Thank you so
Sorry.
much. But that is kind of one of the things I noticed, and that's why I kind of felt confident doing this. Honestly, like if this was a crowded space or there was somebody I was already watching that was
Hmm.
kind of doing this, like I wouldn't be doing this. But there was a gap. Like there's all of us people that are the workers. We're the ones getting this done. That it's a lot of more reservoir-y people talking about the money and their grandiose, accomplishments. And, I don't know. I just thought that there was a gap. And really, I was leaning towards geology and geosteering. I mean, because that's my lane.
Right.
But, the truth is, part of the reason I think that I've had success in this business is that I have kind of cross pollinated with the other departments. Like most of the people coming on are guests that are, engineers and field service people, drillers. I just saw something there and here we are. So
Right.
thanks for watching. And yeah, that's great. And I really, there's a few people at Columbine that I've known for a long time, and one of them is Dick Howell. And
Yeah.
yeah, so you guys have got a really good company. What's really interesting though is kind of your backstory coming into kind of a new business, something that you'd never done before from a different place culturally.
Hmm.
Let's hear about Ebony Jones. You've got a
Yeah.
really cool story. I mean, you and I really clicked. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, again, thank you. And I so just appreciate the opportunity. Really, like when I say it was like a celebrity when I announced that I had reached out and you had responded, like my team was just so stoked. So it really is an honor. But yeah, I have a master's degree in kinesiology. I double majored in environmental science and physiology and exercise science. I had originally wanted to get into the energy space back in 2009. I'm going to date myself when
Okay,
I was
okay.
in
So
college.
you did kind of cross-pollinate there. You have your kinesiology and athletic proclivity, but then you had to throw in a little environmental science. So you,
Yeah.
which I like, but so you probably had a little bit of taste of geology from that minor. You probably had to take a
Yeah.
101 or something like that. Okay.
So,
Okay.
but again, 15 years ago, what's funny is when I told my parents, like, hey, I'm going to get an environmental science degree, it was really before the boom of energy or like there being jobs. I come from a very traditional family, get a business degree, you're going to be in
Yeah.
business, work your way up the corporate ladder. So this is what my mom said to me. She goes, I love that you're so inspired by wanting to make the world better and greener, but there's no jobs. So I was scared. I was people pleaser, so I had a backup plan, and
Okay.
so I switched it. But yeah, I double majored in college, so that
That's cool.
was. y- Thank you. I
Well, and
always
I like the same thing. I competed in college in sports also. And so, like, the whole kinesiology thing, like, I feel it. I feel it.
yeah.
I'm definitely into fitness and in tune with my body and stuff like that. So, and again, having sports trainers and these kinds of things, there's a
hmm
special place in my heart for that too, for sure.
Yeah, so that was where I was kind of in the customer service, hospitality, fitness. If you know most fitness people, we don't just like you can't just be a trainer.
No,
Typically you got to
no,
have
you have to
multiple
do
jobs.
something else.
So my resume, I always say, kind of looks like a Starbucks coffee menu. Like there's a whole bunch of background. I've typically held multiple jobs. I worked my way through college to pay for it. My
Hmm.
biggest thing was like coming out not having debt. So
And you pulled it
I
off, huh?
I did, yeah,
I
I
did
did.
not.
It just when I saw the numbers, I'm a numbers person. So while
Yeah.
I'm very like extroverted and pretty social, I'm also really into spreadsheets. And I have for sure like a true nerd side, I would say. But
Yeah, you're analytical and like to
yeah,
understand. You observe the pattern recognition, that kind of stuff.
yes. So that and numbers like just fascinate me. So I found a way to do it. Like it was tough, right? Like I always say when you got to work 40 hours a week and then go to school, it's for sure tough. And it wasn't easy, but it was so worth it like at the end because when you get out of college now, everybody wants experience. And I was fortunate enough that when I graduated, I had already been a personal trainer working at a gym and I had
Yeah.
done sales, front desk, and training. So I had 5 years when I graduated and that was like what kind of
That's a
launched into
big deal,
management.
actually, with thinking about that because I really didn't. I had the TA and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And there was a direct path from school to the oil companies back when I was doing it. And I think there is still kind of a nice pipeline, but things are changing a little bit. I think that there are fewer geoscience programs,
Yeah.
fewer students. And actually, you're a little more in tune to this than I am coming from real quick.
Yeah.
I don't think we told people what you actually do for Columbine yet.
Oh,
And that ties into what we're about to talk about. I'll
yeah.
let you take it from there.
So, like I said, I have a background in fitness, and then in 2022, I joined Columbine as a recruiter, so in-house full cycle recruiting
There we go.
for their field position, so mud logging, and then RGS, and I would help if we were bringing in like internals for sales, but 90% of what I was doing was focused on bringing in mud loggers and well site geologists to the company. And then I would say like now it's kind of expanded. I focus a lot on recruiting, retention, and then culture and brand management.
Hmm. Hmm. One of the things that kind of caught my attention the most when we spoke yesterday was actually your retention story. Do you want to kind of get into that like this? And this is kind of a industry-wide thing. I mean, is that something we can talk about, you think?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
okay,
for
yeah, let's
sure.
talk about that because that was really interesting to me. And part of this reason I do this podcast is to talk about these regular people and our role in the overall big picture in oil and gas. And again,
Yeah,
this is to
of
feature the
course.
workers, the people that are actually on location, staying up late, working in the office to actually get this oil to come out of the ground.
Yeah. So, as you know, Keith, like rig life's hard, right? I'm not gonna say it's easy. The closest thing I have to experience to what it's like to be on a rig is that I'm a military spouse. My husband was a Marine. So I knew the impact of being away from home for 2 to 3, 4, 6, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, right? Little communication. And so I knew one, kind of the spouse's perspective and what it's like to have to maintain a household when your partner's gone. And so I'm very transparent in interviews. Like I don't sell it as it's this beautiful picture, like I say there's good, there's bad, like we're going to get down and I'm going to tell you everything. Like I'm going
Yeah.
to strip off all the layers so that when you sign up and you sign your offer letter, like you know what you're getting into. The biggest compliment to me is when somebody says it's exactly what you told me, not holy cow, you left out a whole lot in this interview. And I think that was kind of where the shift changed for us is
Yeah.
I got into recruiting thinking like I'm going to be like Oprah handing everybody jobs and you say like, "Oh, you get a job and everybody's going to love me." It's really a sales game to get people to come to companies, and it's not just the job itself. I mean, you have to sell yourself, you have to sell the company, the brand, but really I think the biggest shift for us is when they brought me on, as I said like, "Hey, I've been at the bottom at every company I've been at. I've worked, I've had to work my way to where I'm at. So I'm always going to fight for the people that built our business, right?
Yeah.
Without loggers, without the service, we don't have a business. And if you forget that, like that's when companies take a fall. And
Well, and
so,
I was just going to say, I've known you for a few days at this point, but you've got a unique type of personality and way of, no, you do. And it takes that kind of thing to be able to be upfront with people, but still make them feel respected, right?
right.
Like this is a tough job and you're a tough person, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's a steady paycheck. You're a part of something bigger. And, and it is a tough job. And I can see, people that are not cut out for a constant hum in the background of diesel generators and clanking pipes and, having to sleep during the day and running out when the weather conditions are awful to grab
Yeah.
samples. And, you're out there when it's freezing, you're out there when it's 115. It's the real deal. It's hard work, but it's a part of a bigger thing. And I think that it is incredible. And I can see how turnover would be a big issue. So what are some of the other things that you've done to address that? And what are some of the other unique things that you're doing in this space with Columbine that, a lot of us would like to see other operators and service companies do?
Yeah. So I think one, when you are in like recruiting in this space, entry level jobs is that people got to see the big picture. They got to see like not the right now and that like it's going to be hard right now. So I don't talk about the resume. I can read, right? And I tell them, I'm like, "Hey, I can read. I don't need you to tell me what's on your resume. I already read it. Tell me about you as a person," right? Because that's going to determine if you're going to be successful in this position or not. And, I want to know what that 5-year goal is because I want to help you get there. I think I don't look at mudlogging or joining Columbine as the end game for anybody. It's a stepping stone. And that's what I sell is I'm going to get you the experience you need to get your foot in the door. That's what we are. We
Hmm.
know it, right? Like when I came on, they said like, we know that people aren't going to retire here. We're a smaller company, the bigger opportunities, the bigger pay, all of that is going to be, at the operator level. So I asked people like, what is that 5-year goal? My favorite question to ask is
Yeah.
when you went to college and you went to go get a geology degree, what was the reason why? Like what lit you up about it? And that's what I help them to transition to. Um,
Yeah.
I think the difference is that when we recruit, as I'm sure as your experience the job market, you talk to a recruiter, once they hand you off, you probably never talk to them again, right? My team talks to me whether they're with us still, whether they're not.
Yeah.
When I know their goals, we do biannual or like 2 reviews a year, right? And I'm on those calls with their operations manager. I'm asking them like, "Hey, 90-day goals. What is it? Where do you want to be in 6 months when we're at this review next time?
Uh-huh.
Like, let's get you to the next level and like how can I support you in that?" And that's really been I think the big shift is I think what I've heard as people have come from other companies is there's no progression. There's no advancement. Like I'm
Yeah.
just a night hand. I'm just a day hand. There's no investment in my education beyond learning the job. And I think that's really where Columbine's different. We have a packet that lays out how to move up in the company. We want
Nice.
people to advance and it's self-paced so you can go as quickly for the people who want it, but we also recognize that not everybody wants to be elite. Some people really
Right.
like nights and they want to be the best night hand ever, or
Right.
they know like, "Hey, I don't want the responsibility of training people," and that's fine, and they can kind of progress at the pace that works for them. Secondly, I think I care about the person as a whole, right? Like
Well,
when
I was just going to jump in really quick that that is making a difference for your company, that these people feel like they have somebody that cares about them and that they can reach out to, you know.
yeah,
I don't know that a lot of them have that. And, and we'll get into more of the like mental health stuff that we kind of talked about yesterday, but it's a real thing. And, we are all humans. And, when you're working somewhere, especially under tough conditions, having that kind of support layer there is kind of neat. That's really cool. And here's the other thing. this isn't contrived. Like this is just coming out of you, and and people can tell the difference. And
Yeah.
so that's really good. And that's what I'm saying. You got to place the right people into things, and it looks like you're doing that out in the trailer. But Columbine did a good thing with you too. You know, and Chantel and a whole bunch of the people that they've got there. Eric's a great
Yeah.
guy too.
It's for sure it's a team effort because single-handedly I can't talk to 60 loggers every week, right? I said like we all need to check in on our team. It can't be a one person effort. They need to know that everybody cares. And I've taken calls at 2 a.m. I've taken calls at midnight. I've taken calls on
Yeah.
weekend on a cruise ship. If they reach out to me, I'm always available to my team because I want them to know that they are important. Like I want people to feel seen, valued, and heard, and that can be at any time of day. It's not just a 9 to 5.
I want to do just a real quick throwback because what you're talking about, I don't know if you're in the business. I don't know if you know who Aubrey McClendon was, one of the founders of Chesapeake. He
Okay.
he was a big deal in this business. I mean, I'll talk to you about this at some point. There's some stuff out there, but Aubrey was a very special person. When I went to work for him, absolutely changed my life and the trajectory of my career. But what was special about him and what made a difference about Chesapeake and other places? Now, he wasn't accessible to where, mudloggers were emailing him at 2 in the morning and getting a reply. But no, but what was special though is that he did make people feel special. He had a way of the charisma and charm that, his employees really felt that they cared about him. And
Right.
because of that, and he also financially incentivized, but I think that there was that like loyalty, that, feeling of being seen and heard that, it's rare among CEOs. Let's just be honest.
It is. I think, what also makes it unique is, I talked to Eric is our CEO at Columbine, and, we talk on a pretty much on a weekly cadence. And for recruiters, again, that's typically not access that you have to your CEO. And we've had hard conversations. There's been times where I've called him out. I've called him, and said like, "Hey, you got a minute?" And he knows if I'm saying, "Hey, do you got a minute?" It's probably going to be a little bit longer than a minute, maybe a
He's got to
conversation.
clear the schedule.
Yeah, that's gonna be tough to hear, but he's open to those ideas. He's open and he's receptive. But he attends every training class. So when we bring on new hires, he shakes their hands, he gives out his number to them, and he lets them know that like they have access to him. It's not just, oh, you see him and he's the face of the company and then you never see him again.
Yeah.
He does check-ins with our team. He actually just recently did rig visits, and that was something that I said, like, I think me and the operations manager were really strong about is like the industry this year is shifting, right?
Yeah.
It's not as we had hoped. It's maybe a little bit slower. I think we saw that, and when people start seeing big companies do layoffs, they get worried,
They
right?
get spooked.
Yeah, they need to see.
Everybody does. It shakes it up. And you've got big people doing it right now too.
Yeah, and that's what our team, they're very tech savvy. They're getting news updates to their phones. And I said like we have to be in the forefront. Like they have to see our faces. We can't.
Yeah, I agree with the social media stuff. And listen, I didn't even want to do this, to be honest with you. Like I had to overcome something to put my face out here and talk on screen. But I can tell you that it is very effective. You put the stuff out there, people are going to see it and there's going to be results.
Right.
And so I would say any, company that's not pushing a strong social media presence is falling behind.
Well, and what we have to recognize too is that the people in power at companies is shifting, right? People are retiring. So a
Yeah.
new generation is coming in, taking those C-level suites. And the people that we're hiring into entry-level jobs, they care about things a lot differently than what maybe you and I cared about when we first got out of college, right?
Yeah.
Mental health is important. They
Yep.
say that now 1 out of 4 people will have anxiety in the workforce. It's something that when I grew up, you didn't talk about it, right? Like,
No,
been a
you
tough
just
day
went
and it
to
was,
work and
yeah, leave
suffered
your life
through.
at the door, right? Like, don't
Yep.
bring it to work. We don't want to hear about it. If you answer your phone, that was a write up. If, pretty much if life happens at work, it didn't, it
Yeah.
couldn't. And now, so with that, yeah, a lot of our talent comes from social media. And that's, I said, like, hey, we got to build our presence. But also, as a recruiter, I was seeing people build like all these big brands and they were just like, oh, people want to work for me. And so,
Yeah.
that was really where I started building up my presence on social media. I'd done it on other platforms, but LinkedIn was kind of like, Do I really need to? It is the
Well,
number one
that's my
spot this
target
year.
audience. Listen, I've got to like come
Yeah,
up with all these like creative ideas to do anything on Instagram. No, you know what I'm saying. And listen, the YouTube is the library, right? I can like my posting schedule there doesn't really matter. I don't think I have people waiting for the next premiere or anything like that.
I am.
So I shocking, but nevertheless, I can just throw I feel as though I can just throw them up there. That's the permanent library, right? Like, that's the slow burn. They're going to drip them out. And I've also heard like on YouTube, once you've been doing it for a year, they start to kind of algorithm you and start to
Mm,
push your content differently and stuff. So I'm going to do that. But LinkedIn is the target audience, right? Like, but you have to be careful. You can't swamp people. It's super finicky on the feed, like, like I had people go back and like all my posts, and I was like, no, I just had this other like it cues it differently, and anyhow, so but like figuring out that game, but we got to be on there because that's where our real peer group is. Like, I'm not going to get a new Instagram geologist follower as easily as I would on LinkedIn. That's where they are. That's where your
right.
title matters.
Correct.
Your title on
Mhm.
Facebook is family member, right? Or, friend, or you're this person. But LinkedIn, like, we're associated with a title, and that kind of it can feed people to
Yeah, and I always tell people, like, my number one tip is if you're not on LinkedIn, you need to be because it's
are
a
you tripping?
walking advertisement. It's your walking
Yeah.
resume. I say make sure it's
Yep.
up to date, make sure you optimize that header. Don't just, have your name and then one post. Make sure
I
you're
need your help
engaging.
with some stuff, by the way. Like, I'm a rookie. Like, I wasn't doing any LinkedIn anything, just watching stuff. Now I've changed I'm
You
changing
change
stuff
everything,
all the
right?
time. Yeah. Oh,
Well,
I got to put this up in my feature. Yeah.
yeah, and it's gotta, there's gotta be keywords. It's kinda like Google now, I feel like,
Yeah.
it's people are like, "You gotta optimize your profile header," and I just like you, I had to learn. I was like, "What does that mean?" I took, classes. I was like, "Okay, let me figure out how to do it," because, again, I want people to be able to get noticed, and it really is the number one networking place for professionals. You can
Yes,
s
straight up.
yeah.
Yeah, if you're worried about doing anything business, you need to be on LinkedIn.
Well, and a lot of times, if it wasn't for LinkedIn, would I have been able to get a hold of you? Probably not. It probably would have taken me a minute to figure out where to get
No,
an email address to get access to you. So for
nobody would have heard of me. The only reason you heard of me is that I filled the niche that you're talking about that nobody filled, and now there I am.
right? Because I probably wasn't searching geology podcasts, right? I'm not on Google like, hey, but because it's so strong in my feed of who I interact with, it popped
Yeah,
up. And then, like I said, it came up in conversation. And so but yeah, I tell people, I'm like, if you are not on LinkedIn and you're not active, right? There's a difference between having a LinkedIn and then being
right.
active. I'm like, you got to engage, you got to be having value content, value comment. You can't just say, like, cool, dude, you gotta, engage with it. And that's why when I sent you your responses, I was like, I want him to know I truly actually like
Yeah, you
watch and
cared. I was
listen,
like, all right, it's sold.
not just like, oh yeah, I saw a couple episodes, right? That's very vague. Anybody can say that. And I was like,
Yeah,
I want you to know the impact and why it resonates with me. And
yeah,
so and that's going to be very different for every person that watches your podcast, right? Cuz most people are very tenured in the industry, and that's what I think is so great about it is that it's bringing in, my VP of operations who's been in the industry 10, 15 years, Tim, who's been in for 25 plus years, and then little me, who's been in for just under 3 years. And we all, found this common ground that like, oh, we all love him. And so it was just, it was just a cool way to connect and bridge gaps, like in our team as well. So
well, I love it. I love, and we're getting a little bit close, but I just love all of it. I love that they brought you on. I love all of these ideas that you have. I love all the side businesses and hustles that you do, the running, all the help, and what you even, and actually, before we go, I'm going to let you list off all the things because you've even got a charity, from what I understand,
yeah.
and so you're just kind of this dynamo. But for this last little bit, why don't you talk about, because there was something meaningful that you talked to me about yesterday about people of color being in this business and women as well. And so why don't you kind of segue into a little bit about just kind of your general thoughts and what you're doing at Columbine and what you'd like to see? Because I think it's really nice.
Yeah, of course. So when I first started, I would say like my first year, I was just very quiet because there wasn't a whole lot of people that looked like me in the oil and gas industry.
No,
when,
and there's still not. Let's just be real.
yeah, yeah. In all honesty, one, I'm a female. That's very small percentage on a oil rig. And then two, I'm also
Oh,
a woman of
especially on
color.
location, you're correct.
Yeah. So, but even in the higher spots, right? Like I connected with a
Yeah.
few, and I maybe have five on my LinkedIn network that are women of color in oil and gas companies. So it's very small. And for me, it's about making a bigger shift and more so of a legacy. And so when I recruit, there is bias in recruiting. People can say like that's not true. Again, I'm never going to lie and say you read a resume, right? You see a name, it might be, obviously a culturally different name.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people will just reject those. They won't even look at it, right?
Yeah.
I hand go through everyone. I look, I
Yeah.
see, but I also believe in giving people a chance because I know what
Mhm.
it's like to be on the other end of it. I have a very cultured name, Ebony. You're probably not a white male, right?
No.
Like they probably know she's probably ethnic and, probably a female. And I've seen that bias. I did an experiment recently where I submitted two of the same resumes, one with my husband's name, who is a white male, and my name, and he got 42 reach outs, callbacks. I got nine. Same resume. So I know it's real and I've been on that side. And I said, like, when I got into recruiting, I wanted to change that. And
Yeah.
I'm not perfect. There's still times where, I might slide a resume and then they reach out to me on LinkedIn and I say, like, I'm so sorry that you're actually very qualified. But that was, the shift. And I think we have to be intentional and honest with ourselves. If we
Sure.
ignore it, like, oh, that's not actually happening, it is. And so I try very hard to make sure that I hold myself to a higher standard of like, if I am doing that or if I am tired, just saying like, hey, take a break. And then again, make sure you're looking at the resume as a person, as a whole, not just a name on a piece of paper or on a PDF that's coming through. But as I started becoming more and building a presence on LinkedIn, what's shifted is that people now reach out to me to come work at Columbine. And our recruiting has shifted. We used to rely heavily on job boards and like, we still do some posting on there, but really a lot of people will reach out to us or, like a post. One person specifically, I remember I got onto an interview with her and she said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to see you." And I was like, kind of like you, Keith, like, "Oh, okay." Like,
Yeah.
what?
What's
Um,
happening in your
and she goes, "I wanted to work for your company specifically because I finally saw somebody who looked like me." And that changed the game for me. And that showed me that like representation matters in all
Yeah.
industries. And I know it's a tough club to break into, right? I will say like it's been a boys club for 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
My females still hear about it, and we actually just created a women advocacy group for women's safety on rigs, right? Because one person said like, hey, there was a situation, I didn't know who to call, she called me, and I took it straight to Eric. I said, hey, we need to do something
Ah,
if my
yeah.
team doesn't feel safe, right? We need to advocate for them and we need to make sure that they feel safe. But
Yeah.
I make sure people of all backgrounds, colors, races, male, female, everybody brings something unique to positions. And I want to have a diverse field because I want all of that experience. I've hired people that have had 8 years experience overseas and they can't even get a call back here. And it's like what they bring, like we've had people that have had us, they know a lot of people. They worked for bigger companies and they were interconnected and they were just like, I just need a chance. I have a family, but nobody will give me a chance. And
Mhm.
I love giving people that opportunity to rebuild their name back in the
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
But I
No, that's
also,
really important. That's a huge deal. And we're seeing a wave of people come out now,
hmm
and it's so tough. And listen, the whole database and architecture and everything, like we're able to do a lot more with a lot fewer people. And
yeah,
a lot of
that is
this
very
isn't
true.
even really economics driven as it is efficiencies. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing, and it's really, I can just say, speaking from experience, listen, I came from a very cultural and ethnic background. I grew up in El Paso, Texas. So I was, technically one of the minority people there in, and a very strong Hispanic community. And so, I've was raised like this, and I really do like to see more opportunities for people. I'm a strong believer in terms of, hey, like the most qualified person, we want to get there, but we want to provide opportunities for everybody. And the main thing that you're doing is make people feel welcome. I
Hmm.
don't know what it is why, for example, Black kids aren't learning about geology in school and, going into that degree program. I don't see that there's like a big barrier, especially at the university level. What I would say is it kind of goes back to where they're seeing stuff and just not recognizing that the opportunity is there more than
Yeah.
anything. But I can't really speak from that because I'm sitting here who I am and haven't had to live it. So, that's why it's good to have a unique perspective like yours and, bring it into the business because again, I really do think it's important and I would like to see more people getting interested in this. And there's going to be a gap in geologists. You just got to get smart people in school that are interested and it's not just being a rock nerd. This is a high-end, science. It's not about licking rocks and that kind of thing. This is about understanding the earth and natural resources and that's such a wide range. It can be anything from gravel to gold, oil to obsidian. It's a wide ranging field. I do often wondered what's the barrier there.
Yeah. And I won't lie, like I have seen the shift, just like the decline. We do a lot of relationships with colleges, and we've
Hmm.
seen some say like, hey, we no longer offer a geoscience, it's now under environmental studies or something else, but like we took
Yeah.
away geology because it wasn't producing the numbers. And just what I'm seeing degree wise has shifted as well. It's a lot more, yeah, in environmental science,
Yeah.
geosciences, like whole.
Well, we will be real about this part though. Like those environmental sciences are held up on subsidies most of the time. They're not really a true money making business, other than they're based on federal mandate and
Hmm.
permitting and things like that, if that makes sense. You see what I'm saying? Like, really, the only economic driver is that policy has pushed people to have to spend money on these people. I'm not trying to dog it, but like, that's just the fact of the matter. You know,
Yeah.
it's a noble idea, but at the end of the day, it's tricky. That is what all these departments are going to. And so I
Yeah.
will be curious to see where that heads in the future. And again, you're an environmental scientist. So I'm not trying to dog on that, but it's kind of like, yeah, I don't want to get too into it, but some of the energy subsidies for renewables, they don't stand alone. You see what I'm saying? Like there has to be like something underneath it that's like keeping it lifted up to where somebody may find an economic incentive with it. And honestly, it's kind of similar with environmental science. It's just a little bit of a soapbox for me, but you can make money, but it's basically based on people having to work around policies.
Yeah, it's a different industry for sure. It's
Definitely
not.
different.
Yes, I will say that. And even just like the courses and everything that you take for it. And yeah, I would say it's a very broad term and
I got
it's
a little
based on a lot of.
soapboxy there. That was the first time I've done it on the show.
Hey, it's your show, Keith. You can do whatever you want. If you want to be
Yeah, I can
soapboxy,
do
I love
whatever I
it.
want. But
Yeah.
yeah, nothing against environmental science, but I do see these kind of shifts and hey, let's call it kind of like a communications degree. There's a bunch of people getting them, and now they walk away with $80,000 in student loan debt, and there's not a support structure job wise to keep them afloat. So it's just
Yeah.
something to kind of think about. But hey, listen, we're doing real good on time. Why don't you give us a little quick rundown on all the wonderful things that you're doing, and we'll wrap it up.
Okay, will do. Well, again, I appreciate you for having me. So, I am a corporate recruiter for Columbine Corporation, usually looking for entry-level well site geologists and remote geosteerers for our team. I also own a running company. So, your running recruiter is my LinkedIn brand, but I have a website for it as well. And I just share recruiting tips and how it relates to running as well. But I also do coach people on how to get to their next finish line. And that's Ebony Nicole Training. I've had that company for 5 years. I just started a virtual assistant agency this past February. So I have a team of 9. We currently support corporate and small businesses, just helping them to advance to the next level, allowing CEOs and business owners to stay in their zone of genius while we take care of all the other admin stuff so that you can spend more time on the business rather than in the business.
Hmm.
And then lastly, most near and dear to my heart is that I started a foundation for foster kids aging out of the foster care system. I'm a kid of the foster system, in it for 4.5 years, and then was adopted out when I was just before I turned 5. So I have a soft spot for it. But what people don't know is when you turn 18, you age out and they give you the clothes on your back and whatever you went into foster care with. A lot of times these kids have to transition to homeless shelters, or a friend's couch. And that's if they're lucky enough to have friends and family that have a space for them. So the month they turn 18, whether they're in high school or not, they get kicked out of their foster situation. And so we help provide the gap of helping them get housing, helping them to apply for college licenses, just what they need every day in society to function. And then we're currently building right now our first transitional living apartment. So this has been a 5-year project. I raised over $1 million in 2024 for this project, and we just broke ground in Phoenix, Arizona. So if that is coming, it will be able to house 100 foster kids, which I know is a small number, given that there are over
It's
400,000
something
in the
though. That's
system.
incredible.
But, I say like you got to start somewhere. So this will just allow them to not have to worry about where they're going to sleep. When they age out, they are able to come in and stay rent
And have a
free.
support system instead of fall to the street and bad influences and everything else.
Yes. Yeah. And that's really the goal, is just, again, I say foster kids really are just adults in under the age of 18, because they have to take on adult problems. And I don't think any kid should have to do that. And I do everything I can to make sure that they can get as much of the upper hand, that I was fortunate enough to have when I got adopted. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell. But yeah, I love it all. And, I love being a recruiter. I love connecting people. But most important, like I said, I just love giving people opportunity. I love people knowing that they have somebody else who believes in them and sees their big picture, their vision. Because, I'm sure just like you, like me, Keith, my mom saying like, there's no jobs in environmental. I'm sure you've had people say like, Keith, what are you doing? Like, dude, you got to go get a real job, right? Is what my mom told me when I became a personal trainer. You got to go get a real job, honey. That's not going to pay the bills, right? And then, for me, it built a business. And so I tell people like, hey, I'm here to help you get there. And while I may not be able to directly get you there, I'm going to help you get, the tools, connect you with people, help you build out the resume that you need to get to that next one. Because I want to see everybody win, Keith. That's the thing,
Yeah.
is like,
No, that
there's enough
is.
pie
And
for
I feel the
everybody.
same way. Yep.
So
Yeah. Same thing with the business. But Ebony, listen, you are really a special person. I'm the one that's
thank
honored
you.
for you coming on my show.
And
You just gave me like 100 more reasons to have you back on. You've got a lot of stories and a lot of depth. This is one of my most special recordings.
oh, thank you. I really
Yeah,
appreciate
no,
that.
it's amazing. But we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. But to all of you watching, please make sure you subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, give me a like. I'm gonna put Ebony's some of her websites and information in the description of the YouTube, and I'll be cutting shorts and putting stuff on LinkedIn as well. But in the meantime, to all you recruiters out there, y'all gotta take a page out of this girl's book for real. We'll see you soon.
You have to work for it. Don't be crazy. And work for your money.